Hey guys, this is May. Now on the 20th of November, just a week ago, I ran an online webinar titled The Second Wave, It's Not Over Yet. Now the event was pretty long, it was about 3 hours. So what we've done is we've cut up that content into 9 clips, in which each clip we are addressing a very specific topic within that webinar. Now in this video, the first of 9 clips, what I'm going to address is something that we've all probably already sort of noticed about the world around us. So if you look at things like the stock market and various investments all around you, the price just keeps rising and rising, and it doesn't quite match up with its real world value. We also see the Great Resignation. People are leaving their jobs, and a lot of people don't quite understand why, because these are for reasons that we've never really heard before. So even if we talk about technology, and in the last 20 years, we've seen technology move, but it was more in the line of like phones getting bigger and bigger screens, or mobile apps finding more interesting ways to sort of earn the users' money. But we've never really seen some of these truly groundbreaking technology like virtual reality, biotechnology, space technology. But that topic has been rising in the past 1 year or so. And right now, people are finally taking technology like that seriously. So what gives? So in this video, I'm going to show you the part of the webinar where I explain something known as the air era. And it tells us why does it describe all the funny things that's happening in the world right now? How is it determined? How will it affect us? Okay, so here goes.
Okay, so without any further ado, let's go into part 1 as to why the world is kind of screwy nowadays. Now, the best way for me to start here is to explain to our audiences, especially those who are new to my series of webinars, exactly what the air era is. I'm going to explain this in much detail. Now, even for the people who have heard this from me before, because I do this in every webinar, you do want to pay attention because number 1, you probably need a refresher. And number 2, I'm giving you fresh information today. Okay, so what I'm going to explain here is, now when we talk about the air era, this actually meant that we crossed a line sometime in the 22nd of December 2020. So that's about a year ago. Now this line simply means that now if you recall back on that date, a lot of people were talking about this thing called the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. You may have remembered a lot of people going out there looking at the sky, trying to observe some major event. Now, most people actually do not understand what that actually is. To them, it's just something to see in the sky. Now, this is, without going into technical detail, this is an astrological phenomena that happens every 20 years. So it's not just happens like that. Every 20 years it happens, and each time it has an element. So whether every time it happens, it can be fire, earth, air, or water. So the one that happened in December 2020 is of the air sign. But let me show you something here. Now, if you look into history, over the years in last century, that every 20 years, you'll notice that there was a pattern there. That every 20 years, it was in the earth sign. That's why it's in that olive-looking color. Now, just in case you thought it began from 1901, actually it didn't, just that my PowerPoint slide got no space. But actually, it started from way as early as the 1800s, and it coincided with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So that's when the world became all about productivity, factories, offices, banks, stock market. It's the life that we know, and it's the life that we grew up with. Now, something happened in 1981. Because we again had a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, but this time around, for the first time in almost 200 years, it was in an air sign. So those of you who are old enough to remember that period will recall how computers came into our life. You would go to a shop and suddenly the shopkeeper wasn't writing your purchase in a book anymore. He was typing it into a cash register. And that people weren't working with pen and paper. You had a lot of these electronic devices, and little boys weren't playing cops and robbers anymore. They were playing Nintendo and Sega Saturn. So what happened to the world? And later on, the funny thing was it went back very briefly into the Earth era. And that's when what we saw was a marriage of technology and money. So it wasn't just a website that was giving information. Now you had to click on pay. You had to pay on a website. And also suddenly all of these, you didn't just get things for free on the internet. What you had was e-commerce. And you didn't just use social media to post a video. Nowadays, it was all about advertising and pay per click and how much money you were going to earn from it. So we took technology, we took money, and we had them married together. Okay, so that was what happened. Now, what happened, what was so important about December 2020 was that now that we have crossed that line, today we are November 2021. You see, these conjunctions are going to continue every 20 years. But from now on, the Earth era does not come back. That means from now on, we have officially entered the air era. And what this also means is this is why the world feels so screwy nowadays, because those of us who have been brought up with the Earth era are still using the old methods to assess what is happening in the world. And that's why nothing makes sense. So that things that are not so valuable, somehow the stock price keeps going up. And things that are very valuable, it's people are putting their heart and soul into it, but we're scratching our heads and going, how does that work in our new universe? Okay, so this is briefly speaking, this is the air era. But now I feel confident to share some more information with you. And if you will bear with me, it's a little bit technical, but I promise you I will show you examples, okay? So the red arrow will show you just exactly where we are. We are on the cusp. We have just entered through the door, and all of us here will one day be known as the millennial people, because then we are the ones entering into this new millennial era. So what I'm going to show you is new information about planets like Pluto. So for those of you who are not aware, Pluto is a transformation planet. Every time it is in an air sign, and the last time was in 1971 to 1984, you'll find that there are lots of inventions that come up in the world that completely change our life. So as a greatest example, the internet has its birthday in 1983. Now consider how you can't do anything in your life right now without the internet. Okay, so that's how important this is. Now, this is not the first time it's happened. It happens every now and then. So the previous time before that was in 1882 to 1914. That's when a lot of things like the steel industry, modern construction methodologies, movie technology started to come up around that time. Okay, so that totally made a massive difference for people for even up to a century to come. And you know that the internet will also have that same effect on all our lives. Now, why this is important is because the next one is just around the corner. And that means that all of us are on the cusp right now for yet another transformative period in human history. And the next one begins in 2023. It's not next year, it's the year after. And this is why this webinar is so important, because if you don't understand what is to come, we don't even know what to prepare, and you might end up preparing Earth era things when you should be preparing air era things. So this is going to last for quite a long time, 2023 to 2044. Now, some of you have seen online that people have talked about how, you know, the sentence begins with, by 2030, the world will be fill in the blank, right? That you will have this, you will not have this. And for some of us, we cannot imagine it, because right now we are just entering into 2022 and our world still looks the same as it has been for the last 5 to 10 years. And that's why for people to go, are you sure? Like in 8 to 9 years, we are actually our world's going to change that much. And this is why it's important to recognize how quickly things are going to happen. It is breakneck speed, guys, and you have to know about this right now. Now, what I'm going to show you, another planet here, is the planet Uranus. Now, Uranus is about innovation. It's about new things that come up in the world. It causes us wonder. It's like, oh, really? This is totally new. Now, sometimes when it occurs on its own, just like that, it will accompany a lot of interesting innovations and inventions, but it doesn't exactly change the world. So one of the times that it came out was 1941 to 49. So that was the World War II years. So in those years, there were a lot of inventions, but those things were pretty much only good for the war. And once the war ended, it was like people were not so interested in that technology anymore. Now, what is even more interesting is that later, another one came up at about 1968 to 1975. And what you want to absolutely pay attention to is what I call the overlap period. So if you see here, the overlap is between 1971 to 1975. Now, what usually happens when these two happen at the same time is that there are inventions that happen in the world. In astrological terms, it has a birth time. But when something comes into our world during the convergence, that invention totally transforms your life, and you must pay attention to this. Let me prove it to you. Now, in 1971, this thing was born. It's known as the Intel 4004 microprocessor. And without this thing, you won't be watching this webinar, either on your phone or on your laptop and in all the millions of devices that you have all over your house. Right? And in 1973 was when we had our first mobile phone call. And consider this one changed your life and it will continue to do so. And 1974, we saw the invention of the Altair 8800. You may not know what this thing is, but it's what gave birth to the wonderful career of Bill Gates and Microsoft, right? So that's this is the birth of the modern PC. And in 1971 was also a very important year because then Richard Nixon went on TV to announce that the USA was going to take the USD off the gold standard. And this is also he's the grandfather of quite a lot of the financial problems that we see in the world today, because it gave birth to our version of the fiat currency that we all use in today's world. All right, so now the thing is, again, this thing will continue. So then in year 2000, we again had the Uranus thing, and you will see what I mean by things that are not invented. When things are not invented over that overlapping period, it does not have the same power. Let me show you. 1996 to 2003, we had the Tamagotchi. It was hot at the time. No one cares about it now. Now the DVD, it was hot at the time, but no one cares about DVD now. Okay, so what this means is that you want to pay a lot of attention to when people tell you that something is the next hot thing, it will be the next big thing. But if it doesn't happen during the overlap period, I would not be so sure that it is the thing that is going to change the world. So be very careful if somebody tells you that that is going to be the next big thing. Because you know what? We are on the verge of yet another one of those overlap periods, and those big things are not born yet. Okay, so that means be very careful what you go into nowadays. Okay, so look at where the overlapping period is. Now, the period is, it's not even a partial overlap. This is a complete overlap between the years of 2025 to 2033. That is 8 years. Now, in those 8 years are when we are going to see, it's going to be like 71 to 74 all over again, right? Those are the inventions that will change our lives for centuries to come, right? So the question is, what are we going to expect out of this? So let me introduce you to, now that we are in the Aquarius era, what are some of the astrological words that gives us some sense, you know, what to expect? So things like community, things like, we started with global, but thanks to Elon Musk, now we're talking about galactic as well. And then we also talk about authenticity, that this is not just about all the fancy packaging. We want things real. And then freedom, diversity. There's more attention on gender equality and racial equality than ever. Things are automatic now. Press button and everything is done for you, right? People want to get into groups. And there are also instances of people who are breaking free from convention. And I think what's most inspiring is the possibility of what stands ahead.
So what you have just seen are some of the great keywords that describe the air era, which could be very useful for you if you are planning for your next project or your next business. So remember, this is the first of 9 clips. So continue watching to see how the air era is going to make a difference to our economy.